Welcome to On the Path. I'm Dr. Jack Gaddy Hilton, aka Unsung Empath, and joining with me is Ashley Buckner. Ashley, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you.
So, a little bit about Ashley. Ashley, you are a licensed clinical social worker. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that's correct.
That's correct. But my understanding is that, it's hard to say you're a licensed clinical social worker in this state because much like a Pokemon trainer, you are collecting all the states when it comes to where you can practice. Talk to
Yes.
me a little bit about kind of your background, a little bit of like what you do as a social worker, and then we'll go back to the very beginning of what brought you into the field of social work.
Absolutely. Yes. First of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate that. I started in social work back in 2009 and have done a lot of really cool things. I'm from South Georgia. That's where all this accent is from, near the swamp. So in that small area, I had the opportunity to kind of work in a lot of spaces, really loved trauma, crisis, grief, and loss. So it kind of led me in that path. And when my daughter decided to become an adult and go off to college, I didn't know what I was going to do with myself. So I started collecting licenses because I thought if I have a license everywhere that I may want to live, then I can work. And then it became I was like, well, you have this many, you might as well go ahead. So I currently have the 43, and the other eight should be approved any day now. So really thankful for that opportunity to kind of serve without borders.
Are you currently seeing clients across the states?
I am. Yes, I am.
Is
And it's
that talk
really,
to me about that process? That's like, that's crazy to me
it
in a good
is
way, crazy in a good way.
it's crazy. We kind of joke in my family, like, could you have a cheaper hobby? Because the state boards could be a little expensive. But I'm almost done now, and yeah, it allows me to be able to see people, routinely in California, Hawaii, Alaska, things like that. But it also allows, hey, I'm going to visit so and so. Can I still continue this therapy that impacts my life? And the answer is absolutely. So
What's some of the ethical considerations somebody might have if they were interested in following kind of the similar journey that you've done?
I think it's really important to note the cultural differences everywhere. I think it is so important to go in with this cultural humility because when you serve people, just because they're in the same state as you or as your cousin, you have no idea what their life experiences are like. So really being open to hearing them and being open to hearing stories. And so when my daughter did graduate, I bought an RV. Just to let you know this little piece, I bought an RV and I started traveling around, and I realized that the world was so much bigger, especially when you're living with people versus when you vacation or when you meet people, along life. And so it taught me to just listen and to really hear people's stories and just be interested in that. It's been an amazing blessing for sure.
Well, I'm listening and I want to hear your story. Ashley, where were you born? Where were you raised? What was growing up like for you?
So born in North Florida, raised most of my life in South Georgia, like I mentioned, in the swamp with the black water down there and the alligators. That was real. Grew up in a very, very rural area. Like rural, we had a dumpster and a church. That's what we had. We didn't have a red light. We didn't have any of those things. In the whole county, I think there were like, I want to say there was only two, but very small town. And um, grew up, in a difficult space. I really recognized early on that everyone has a different story and a different path. My favorite professor said it later, but I didn't know how to put it into words until he said it. He said, everyone tells you to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but there's times you don't have shoes. And what I realized was that some of the people that had experienced some similar things to me didn't have the same shoes as me. And that didn't make me better. That just meant I needed to be on a path to help others. So my shoes were definitely strong, and I was able to kind of form this beautiful career that I have now.
So, any siblings?
Yes, I have two younger sisters. Yeah, they're my poor dad. He was swamp people before that was a thing, and so to have all these girls around, he was probably thinking, "What in the world have I done?" But yes, we two sisters and my mom. They still live in South Georgia, so I visit when I can. Yeah.
So, at a young age, you and your sibling, I grew up in Fort Lauderdale, so I know perfectly well about the Everglades and, the beginnings of the swamp leading up to,
Yes.
probably New Orleans and all that.
Yes.
uh, we just grow up with like conditioned do's and don'ts by body of water. It's just something that's
Absolutely.
in our nature.
Absolutely.
So, you grew up in a small town. Was life easy?
No, it wasn't. You know, there was addiction a lot in my family and a lot of dysfunction. And I really focused, when children and adults actually are in chaotic situations, we control what we can. And in my space, that was my education. And I don't know why, but I told myself you have to have a master's degree. In what? I didn't know, but I just thought if you have that, that is your ticket. Like that's my golden ticket to not living the life that I lived, right? So that's just always what I pushed. I have to have a master's degree. I have to have a master's degree. I don't know why. No one ever told me that, but in my head, that's what made sense. And that's what I controlled and really worked towards during
Was
that time.
school or education ever something like a priority for your family or something that's
Um,
a
Honestly,
value?
yes and no. So my mom actually got her I don't know how old I was. I wanna think I was a teenager, but that's been just a little bit. But my mom got her GED and actually went back to school, and that was a real inspiration to me. I know I was a teenager when she graduated from college, and that allowed us to get out of a space that was unsafe in a lot of ways. And so, again, I think it really reinforced that idea that education was your ticket. So that's what I pushed for. And again, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just knew I needed a master's degree.
How has addiction, you mentioned, and if you care to, you can always say, I plead the fifth. How has addiction affected your life? What did you see as a kid? What was that like for you, that environment?
Yeah, the very, with addiction in general, there's always chaos, right? You never know what to expect. So you're always in this fight or flight mode, always. And I think that carries into adults, which is why trauma is such a passion for me. I think we walk around all the time with these hidden traumas and we're fully functional, so people don't recognize what these traumas do to us. But I was always in fight or flight, and I constantly felt like I had to prove myself, even though no one told me that. I'm big on the adverse childhood experiences and what we know about some of the things that happen with addiction and chaotic situations is that we think if we do this, I'll be good enough or I can make a change. So you keep trying to prove yourself over and over. Again, that happens even in adulthood. And that's really what I grew up with. And my dad passed away young at 56 due to his addiction history. And I had this amazing, wonderful father for 3 years, like, beautiful. At the end of his life, I could sit there and say, "Well, I didn't have it all this other time," and that's true, and my dad definitely made some amends with himself and family and God during those 3 years, and it was a beautiful time. Like, for me, it was such a healing, and, my mom had her own struggles with that as well, and just seeing her over the years work through those spaces and work through addiction it helps me realize people recover is really what it does. And, my sisters and I are very different. We're just, I don't know, we're like 3 different humans. It's the oddest space when we all get together. We love each other, but we're very different. And I think that also goes to show that just because you were in a space doesn't mean that you react in the same way. Someone said something once at my dad's funeral that really stuck with me, especially for my clients. They said, "You all 3 lost your dad, but you all 3 lost someone different." And so that
Hmm.
really stuck with me to know that individually we all have our own experiences. We cannot just think that just because an experience looks like something we've experienced that we know how it is. So that's really shaped me a lot in my life.
So were your parents married up until the point that they were?
Yes and no. So my parents were very, very chaotic. They loved each other immensely when they loved each other. And when they did not, they did not. And it usually came with red and blue lights, oftentimes. And I say that jokingly, but that's real. They would date each other even until my dad died. They would date each other for 1 week and then they wouldn't. And so they loved each other, but really did not have the capacity to have a functional, healthy relationship. And so I learned in that I'm an eat the meat, spit out the bones kind of person, as my dad used to say. So in that, I learned that you can absolutely love deeply, but you need to make sure that you're protecting your space. And if people don't bring out the best in you, those are not the people that you need to be around, even if they bring out intense emotions. So that's what I learned in that space.
That's a good start to the foundation of boundaries, huh?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So remind me, they dated on and off until the point he
They
passed
were
away.
married and they divorced, and then they would date. One weekend they would date. We always had Sunday dinner. I wanna say that. We always had Sunday dinner
Okay.
whether they were dating or not. We just weren't really sure if they were dating or not until the conversation came up. So we were always as surprised as everyone else. We're like, "Oh." this week. So yeah, they loved each other a lot. They weren't healthy. They weren't healthy as individuals and they weren't healthy as a couple, truthfully.
Did they live together?
Some of the time. Some of the time.
So who did you grow up living with mostly?
Mom and dad, on and off until and our babysitter had a huge part in raising us. They weren't just our babysitters. We just kind of moved in with them and we didn't really leave. They were amazing mentors in my life. And then as I got older, I did live with my mom and my great grandmother actually lived with us. So, yeah. Yeah,
So you mentioned addiction affecting both individuals.
it did.
Did their addiction kind of affect how they parented you and how they were able to be present for
Yeah,
you?
it did. I look back now and I think that again they had different shoes. I think they both were trying to make up for ways that they maybe had not been parented or these generational traumas that happen. And so I think they thought they were doing a good job because they weren't doing this. We learn so much, as we go. And I just don't think they had the capacity to be health they weren't healthy for themselves, right? So I don't think they knew how to parent in a healthy way. But I also had this entire list that I made in like my 20s that said things they didn't mean to teach me.
Hmm.
And that's a beautiful thing that's always shaped my life is they didn't mean to teach me to be this amazing protective parent. But I am. I'm a good one. Goodness, I'm a good one. And I'm
Well,
proud of
well, honestly, I was literally going to ask you, does your daughter know how much you love her? You got an RV to follow her slash a career that revolved around where she might be.
I actually got an RV to run from her. And what I mean by that is not because I don't love her, but because she was my entire world. And I thought, I'm going to stifle her. Like, I'm going to be knocking on her dorm door, being like, hey, have you had dinner? And she's going to be like, Mom, leave me alone. I'm an adult. So I said, I don't know what to do to not have her as the center. So that's why I traveled and I let her know that I mean, she always knows I'm there and now she's back in Florida and, you know, lives with us. So that's fantastic. But yeah, I actually ran from her to give her the life that I wanted her to have. I didn't want her to feel like I was just trying to live through her. I wanted her to know she was strong and independent and loved and she could live her own life.
Ashley, were you parked in front of the dorm with, eggs cooking in the RV saying, you can have breakfast here if you want?
I would have if there would have been parking space. I'm not gonna sit here and lie.
So let me ask you a question.
Mhm.
When was your daughter actually? So let's go a little bit before that. You grew up in the environment that you did, who loved and received whatever love that you could
Mhm.
by your parents
Mhm.
and what they were able to
Yeah.
offer. But you knew at a young age you needed to get an education for yourself.
Yes.
So when you became into that pathway of like now it's time for me to go and get an education, what did you get? Where did you go? How did you obtain an education? And kind of walk us through that.
So, really weird space. I, had a few scholarships when I graduated, and I decided to when I say stay at home, I stayed at home, and I got married super young. Definitely know now it was an escape space. We were just young, and I went to college at Waycross College, and I got an associate in business, and I don't know how that happened. I just prayed if I could get through accounting that I just said, if you just give me a D, I will never do this again. I promise. So I got my associates in business, but did keep my promise. On campus, they had a program for Savannah State University and it was in behavior analysis. And so that worked really well because my daughter was very young. And so I went to school on campus. Well, I went to Savannah State a few times, but got my bachelor's in behavior analysis. And then I needed a master's degree. Again, no clue what I wanted to do, but and I didn't even know what social workers did. Just gonna be realistic. Had no clue. I mean, of course, social workers take children, right? Like that's all we do. And so I thought that's what it was, but the schedule worked out really well with my family and my full time job and my little child. And so I went to school at Savannah State, which, by the way, was one of the biggest, most amazing things that ever happened to me. It's an HBCU. And I learned that life is so much bigger than the little bubble that I knew. Amazing things I learned there, and it completely shaped my entire life. I don't know how I fell into that path, but very thankful for it. So I got my master's degree at Savannah State University in social work. And the first day that I was there, this professor that I mentioned, the bootstraps, his name's Dr. James Williams, by the way. He's a fantastic human. And he said, "Your first assignment is everyone go to therapy." And we gasped, like we could not believe this was happening. We're here to help other people. And he said, "First of all, you never tell someone to do something you're not willing to do yourself. And the second thing is everyone has their stuff." And I think that really started this path. I went for an assignment, but I came out with this amazing idea that healing could still happen for me. I didn't have to just push through it. I didn't have to compartmentalize it. Yeah, completely shaped my life. So then I got my master's in social work, and I realized that we do so much more than take children, and it was the most beautiful career. And I just fell into it. I don't know how this happened, but I didn't know enough to make that decision, but I'm thankful that it happened.
I love that you mentioned that. I mean, it's March, and I mean, I do plan to release this episode within the March range. It's National Social Work Month. And so,
Yes.
right, nobody knows what a social worker is. Sometimes we don't even know,
We don't even
but we
we
do
want
everything. We do everything, right? We totally
everything.
do. We do everything. When I think about what you just shared with me, you got married young.
I did.
You had a baby at what age?
I was a few weeks shy of 22.
That's not easy to go back to school when you have a full time responsibility.
But it was not an option. Like, I have this very core memory of where I looked at my mom one day and I said, "Can we leave?" And she said, "We can't afford to leave." And I just said, "I can tell you what I was wearing." And I said, "I will never be in the space that I can't leave." And, I think that was the drive, right? So even with in fact, having a little child made it even bigger to me that I had to get this education.
Are you married now?
Yes, yes, I got married a little over 3 years ago. No, her dad is married, and they have actually, with our daughter, they have 6 girls in their life, and they are a beautiful family. I'm actually going to visit them this weekend, so, yes, we are all beautiful and healthy. We were just young, and we're not in a healthy space to if I learned anything, it's that you have to have boundaries, and we didn't have good ones.
Well, let's talk about that. So you got an education, at what point did you realize, "Ooh, this marriage is not going well," or this parenting
We
wise?
probably knew before the marriage occurred, but you couldn't tell us anything. And, we're just very different people. I'm a world traveler, and he is a very established minister. And we were just different people and had different goals, but we had this amazing child, right? And she has like the best versions of both of us. Really, really thankful for her. The chapter, of course, no one wants to get divorced, but we were very thankful for that healing. When he remarried, their girls were younger than our daughter. We would walk them all into school together. We had birthday parties together. I went to a different church than him, but when our daughter was in programs, we would all be there together. Like I said, this weekend, one of their daughters is getting married, and I'm going to be right there present because we're a family.
Oh, I love that. That's like
Yeah.
the where I'm sure a lot of people want to be if they did kind of unfortunately have to split ways with somebody. Was it easy to so let me ask you a first question. How long into getting married did you get a divorce?
I think we were married, gosh, sorry, I think we were married, uh, almost 9 years, I wanna say. Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
What was that loss like still?
I work with this a lot, and I think my own life shapes it, but grief and loss is not just about losing someone. Grief and loss is about the idea that there is this movie version of our life that we all create. We all do it. And when life doesn't look like that, whether it is our health is not the same, our finances are not the same, our relationships, we could just go on and on. That is an absolute loss. And I think that we have to look at things like that. And so, it was the it was like a death. I've heard someone describe marriage, or divorce, excuse me, as the death of a dream, and that was very, very accurate. Very difficult space, but also a space that was healthier and a space that gave us different shoes to walk in because we both needed that. So, yeah,
Yeah, I love that you really highlight what grief and loss is. I think people think it is the extreme end of, death. Rarely, I mean, we're experiencing loss of a lot of things, opportunities, purpose.
absolutely, absolutely.
So you do end up getting your master's.
I did. I got it, and then the next year is when we divorced, and then we both started this new life and journey, and I worked local, and then I
So
started
you
working in behavioral health and all the local spaces, hospice. I think community mental health, especially in a rural town, is such a blessing and a curse. We're overwhelmed, we're overworked, we're underpaid, but the experiences that you receive in that are so game changing because I do find that sometimes people in larger cities, you might go into a niche space, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But that was not my experience. I kind of did everything. And really, where I landed, my sticking point was that when I worked for the community mental health, the state actually took over crisis services. I was doing crisis services with well, I did everything with them, but then my last piece of that was crisis services. And when the state took that over, I became a supervisor for crisis services and really covered a large area and saw people at their lowest every single day. And that really shaped me. I did that for probably 8 or 9 years. Seemed to be my sticking point with things. And so it was 8 or 9 years. Then that's when my daughter graduated. My husband, funny story, I told him that I had an interview and that it was a traveling type job. And he is oh my gosh, he's such a go with the flow guy. Just go with the flow. And he said, okay, that sounds good. And so when I went into the interview, I said, is it possible I can travel in an RV? I did not say my RV. I want to say that because I did not lie because I did not have an RV. And they said that would be wonderful. So of course, then I have to get an RV. Do what any person does. I just order one online. And I called my husband and I said, hey, you said you want to travel. So I had this job interview. It went really well and they offered me the job kind of on the spot, and I told them we would love to travel, and he's like, that's really cool. And I said, and I told them we would drive our RV, and he's like, Ashley, but you never lie, and we don't have an RV. And I said, and I still don't lie. We actually pick it up on Saturday. um and he said to me, like, he wasn't as thrilled as I thought he would be. It was kind of rude, but he's like, I've never driven an RV. And I was like, well, it's only 32 feet. It's only 32 feet. It'll be totally fine. So we pick up this RV and we start this adventure of traveling the country in this box. It was a lot of fun, but a lot of stress.
That's funny. That is funny. What does he do? That is he able to travel
So
and
he's the COO of our business. When I started Anchor and Rise last year, he and our daughter work with me, and also we have a team that is ever growing. It's been a beautiful space. So he travels along with me and goes with the flow and kind of grounds me a little bit when I get these crazy wild dreams that I get. And yes, it's really beautiful.
that's funny. So that's where I got the harbor thing. You have a private practice
I
that is
do.
called.
Anchor and Rise therapy. Yes.
When did
Yeah.
you start that?
So that was last year. Is it okay if I tell the story of how that happened?
A
Okay,
hundred
thank you.
percent.
So we were living all over the country, and then we were living in northern Minnesota, which is a whole beast for me. The -50 and the swamp girl in me did not mesh very well, but I
I
loved
live
my
in Bangor, Maine. You would not survive.
I would not survive. But I saw the northern lights and I thought, this has to mean something, right? Like, this means, of course, I must buy a house. Like, of course, that's what it means. So I bought a house in northern Minnesota because, hold on, I want to go back just to say something. So, much to my mother's dismay, I got this tattoo that says live the dash. So, when my dad died, and again, he was very young, he was 56. And at his funeral, they discussed the dash poem, which basically says when you die, on your tombstone is your birth date and your death date. And the only thing that matters is the dash in between. And so I made up my mind that I was going to live, even if it didn't make sense to other people. Like, I was going to do the things I wanted to do. And that wasn't just about like travel and all these wild things, but it was about like not having regrets at the end. Because I'm a certified end of life doula too, and that's something I really work with people on, is making sure you don't have these regrets of things you didn't do. So hence the RV, hence all the moving. So I called my husband and I said, hey, why don't we move to Florida? Sounds like a great idea. We were living in Minnesota and our daughter had come to live with us because she has some health concerns. And I said to her, you could stay in Minnesota or you could come to Florida. And she said, I'm going to Florida. I'm freezing. I'm going to Florida. So we all came to Florida and we had this major life event that occurred, and it rocked me to my core. In fact, I took FMLA. I've never taken FMLA, but the thought of being a therapist, I couldn't do it. Like, I couldn't even imagine it. And I was probably 10 weeks into my 12-week FMLA, and I could not function at all, not in life, not in work. It was just a really, really difficult time. And I was in my church and I was just praying during the song service. And I was like, I don't know what you want me to do, but I can't go back to working all of these jobs that I'm doing, and I'm burned out physically and emotionally. And honestly, my focus is elsewhere. When life shakes you in this way, you reevaluate your priorities. And I actually heard, it was not a audio hallucination, but I actually heard, I need you to anchor in your strength and rise in your purpose. Creative person. I knew that didn't come from me. So I didn't know what in the world that meant. So I just kind of sat around, and probably that night my husband said, "Why don't you start a business?" And I was like, No, I don't want to do that. Like, my boss would be a jerk. I kind of joke with you about that. I was like, my boss would be a jerk. They would work me way too hard. I don't want to do that. The logo just kind of rolled to me. It's an anchor with a starfish on it. And the anchor is for anchoring, but the starfish has to do with the starfish story of the person throwing the starfish into the ocean and the person coming behind them and saying, there's way too many. You're never going to make a difference. And they said that I made a difference for that one, and it actually inspired that person to throw the starfish as well. It just kind of came to me. And again, I'm not creative. So I listened when this came, and I opened Anchor and Rise Therapy. And so I am getting licensed across the country. I'm a clinical supervisor in all the states that I am licensed in. I do continuing education. I started with my biggest goal of being able to present at one conference and be on one podcast. That was the biggest thing that I wanted to do. I think I have 13 upcoming conferences, and they are huge conferences across the country, and even one in Belize in May. I've been on multiple podcasts just able to share my story. I have an education portal. I have an entire team. I'm hiring peer support specialists and therapists, and life has just exploded in a way that I did not anticipate. And I think it was just because I asked and then I listened. And that's something I think that we don't do in life a lot of times. So that's my story of how it was formed. I'm very, very proud that I listened that day.
Talk about that experience having to go on FMLA, somebody who probably wouldn't do that.
Yeah. Devastating. My entire purpose was providing. I think that's something I learned in childhood, is that you have to provide for yourself and those around you, because what if someone else doesn't, right? And so I have never been obsessed with money, but I have always been obsessed with security because I never had it, to be truthful. So in this space where, you live on what you make, no matter what that is, right? We do. And this thought of like stability really, really bothered me. But I also thought, if this is my dash, there's a piece of my life that needs me right now, like in a way that I had not been pouring into. And I wasn't blatantly doing anything wrong or bad, but I had lost sight. I think we all kind of do that. And then I also felt this guilt for taking care of myself, because I preach that and I'm really good at teaching it. Fantastic. Horrible at probably following that myself. So when it came to that piece, I thought all my clients are going to hate me, and I don't want to explain and I don't want to pour it out there, but I said I had to take care of me, and they know me, and so they knew that was the truth. And I think it taught me grace, because I think I was always like, someone's late, someone's this, someone's that. And I had to be in a space of receiving grace. And people were wonderful, by the way. They were absolutely wonderful. And so it taught me from then on out, you don't know what someone's dealing with. You have no clue when you ask someone, "Hey, how you doing?" in the Walmart, that they could really be having the worst day of their life.
I'm trying to reflect a little bit, about what was that event that had to put you finally in FMLA?
Just a medical event with my daughter. She has some health concerns, and being in that space of saying, like, "Oh my gosh, I think we take for granted that when we walk into a room, someone's going to be there." And when it's your own child, when it's your own, life, all the skills that you teach other people go out the window. And in that moment, it was just more important for me, and will always now be a priority for me, to just hold my baby, even though she's an adult. And she needed me. And I'm not just counting what my clients needed, but in that moment, I would have been a horrible therapist if I were not a mama first. And so that really shaped me. It absolutely turned everything around for me. And I see life different. I see my clients different. There was definitely some healing that came out of a bad situation.
Absolutely, I love that. And we know your daughter means so much to
Oh
you.
my gosh, yes.
I can't imagine whatever the situation was, what that was like for you and what
Yeah.
you were experiencing internally.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really, really devastating, and but we all as a family, it was actually amazing because I work on I work on the circles of trust a lot of times. So I everywhere you go in my house, you're gonna see some bullseyes, some just dot with 3 circles. And I just have this everywhere because now I just have to ground myself sometimes and say, is this something I can control? Is this something I can influence? Or is this something I just need to kind of give to God, give to the universe, ignore right now? How much energy can I put into this? And at that time, that circle that was next to me needed everything that I had. And I took it. And I was very thankful for the opportunity to be able to do that. Because I never even like took time off work. I was such a workaholic. I was working like 100 hours a week. I'm serious. And I had done that for 20 years. This was nothing new, but that changed me. That changed me.
Yeah, that honestly, it's, you know, 20 hours, I'm sorry, 100 something hours in a week, is no joke, right?
No joke.
All for the sake of stability.
No, probably I learned that it was a coping. I thought it was a healthy coping skill. I thought that if I couldn't control something else, that if I knew I could work, right? Like after the divorce, I was, oh my goodness, I was a machine. But what that did for me was not have me deal with real life. And I don't want to do that anymore.
I love that. I love that the growth of your journey, the growth of your journey, and to come even full circle to, I mean, as you know, I developed the path model, presence
Yes,
alignment,
cannot
truth
wait to take
healing.
that, by the way.
Oh, I love that. Oh, I'm so excited. I like it's all about, you know, especially when I think about alignment in the path model, it's all about aligning to who we are and who we are becoming and who we feel God is calling us to be. And when we make choices in life, it's saying essentially, let me choose today
Yes.
what to respond that's aligned with who I am. And I feel like you're like in this step now of healing where you're like making sure everything's aligned to who you are.
Absolutely. Yes, for sure. Yes.
I love
And it's
that.
beautiful. It's such a healing place. I love it.
I'm excited for you. And to the point, like I literally, I look on like LinkedIn. That's where we met. You are busy. You're still busy.
A little
Maybe I
busy.
don't. It's different though, right? It is different when you're working at an organization and when you're working for yourself. It doesn't really stop per se, right? I'm always doing path model related things, but it's fun. It's exciting. It's not
It's
like this, like
fun. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm in North
So what?
Carolina doing a conference, tomorrow, and I'll be in Portland, on, Tuesday of next week, and I'm doing these things that actually fill my cup. Like, doing supervision for people is I'm just doing things that fill me, and it's beautiful. My grandmother always said, "Find what you love and then find a way to make money at it," and I thought she was kinda crazy, right? But she was brilliant. She was so smart. Yes.
It took hard work. It took
It did.
resilience to get here.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So when I think about you though, you have a lot of foundations in the work of social work and then even getting your master's. You did a lot of grief and loss work. What would you say if you had a specialty or a niche? What is that now?
So currently, again, I do the grief and loss, but I really work a lot with trauma and accelerated resolution therapy. It has been an absolute game changer in my life. I took this class for accelerated resolution therapy because I thought someone out there is going to need this. It's not me, but someone out there is going to need this. And of course, what happens in good trainings is that therapists do therapy on other people to learn. And all of a sudden, I was able to my personal story, I couldn't give my daughter her medication, her rescue medication when she had a seizure. I couldn't. I went to the best therapist in the world and I would just stand in the corner and scream. I couldn't go to her. And her last set of seizures, the doctor said, if you would have given her medication. And I was like, and they weren't even being mean, right? They're just being honest. And I did one session with someone practicing on me, and all of a sudden I can give her medication, and I was like, "What is this crazy miracle that I can in one session get healing and give healing in all of these spaces?" So I became master certified in that. Speak across. That's what I'm doing all my presentations on primarily is accelerated resolution therapy and working with Miss Lainey Rosenweek about how to do that. It's been beautiful. It's been amazing. Sorry, my dog is also announcing themselves. You spoke it into existence.
I hear it.
Now it's happening.
I'm sure there's a background noise muter somewhere in this system. Let me ask you a question for people that might not know what art is. How does that differ from like EMDR, IFS? Why would I seek out art versus, because I made a threads post about this. I wrote, primary care medication providers, please stop telling your clients they need to do EMDR without any form of research or strong understanding of what these modalities are, because it not only really limits who the clients could see, right? They can get instant access to therapists, and that's hard too. Wait lists are absurd, but they can get maybe there's a difference between maybe getting into an EMDR specialist versus a therapist who might be really skilled, but because they're not EMDR trained, they're not being connected. So then that means
Absolutely.
prolonged access to treatment. It means maybe bypassing of
Yes.
treatment. And so I like to always highlight. I'm glad that you are specialized in a different modality. Why art versus EMDR, IFS? What does art bring into the table that draws you to it? Then kind of I'm fully trained in EMDR. I have a background in structural dissociation model. I have recovery oriented cognitive therapy, right? Like I have great models behind me. I'm really subscribed to my path model, right? When it comes to a
Yes.
form of treatment, but like not one shoe fits all, right? And so I rarely do EMDR with my clients, to be honest. I started doing EMDR after 3 years with a client that I've been working with because I felt like now is maybe the time to try something different.
Yeah.
Why arts?
So what I found was, so I'm not formally EMDR trained, but what I found is that I had so many of my clients when I was working crisis, especially, that would have an EMDR session and then be in crisis because there is such a process. It is effective and wonderful, but there is such a process to kind of get where you need to go with it, all the steps, the 8 steps. So, this idea of being able to do one session and it works with voluntary image replacement. And so the clients are actually in seriously one session working on their traumas. So it actually takes when we have a trauma, it impacts the body. Nothing happens in the body, the mind doesn't know. Nothing happens in the mind, the body doesn't know. So this idea that when you have a trauma or experience something, it impacts your body. And so you might feel the tightness in your chest, you might feel the tightness in your shoulders, that lump in your throat, right? The tingling hands, all of these things that are trauma responses. So the idea is to remove the trauma response. And I thought it was too good to be true. Again, I thought this was going to be great for someone else. And I was at burnout phase, right? So I needed something that I could do. The great part about this is not only is it super effective, but the client does not have to retell their story. So they're not telling their story in an intake and then telling it to the next 3 therapists that come along and then those therapists leave and they have to keep starting over. We're re-victimizing our clients 100%. And as a therapist, we carry this stuff with us. We absolutely do. And so if I can help you with your trauma, you don't have to tell your story unless you want to. I'm here for it, but a lot of people do not, and they get healing, and it keeps the compassion fatigue down. Beautiful. It has been a game changer for so many people that I know and actually saved lives. Like I said, when EMDR, and this is not a knock on it, but I was always so worried because sometimes people feel worse before they feel better, and then they won't go back. And then you've opened this can of trauma that we aren't closing, and they may never seek out therapy again. And so I like the idea. I'm a solution focused girl. I like going in and working through some stuff and having people leave and say, that was crazy, but I feel better. That's great. Fantastic. So, yeah,
So, how might I want to learn art, get trained in art? How long does it take?
it's a
Are
3-day
they
training, actually. It's a really intensive 3-day training. They offer it all over the country. And if you go to acceleratedresolutiontherapy.com, it gives all of the information, all of the background and the research. And I think that kind of stuff's important when our clients are looking for a modality. Also, the creator of Miss Lainey Rosenwig does a monthly intro for free just for people to come in and ask questions. And I think that's beautiful. To talk to the creator and kind of find out her reason for what happened here and how it works. I'm for that. I love getting it from the source, and so she is still so involved in being able to spread this word. And so, yeah, you could just check out the training section there, or join her intro, or come to one of my conferences and hear about some of the good things that it's doing and how to get trained. I think it changes lives. And again, everything's not for everybody, but it's my only therapy that I primarily do now.
It's awesome. It sounds like you have a passion if you're talking about it and like most of the conferences you do.
Yes, love it. Yes. In fact, I'm presenting with my peer. Her name is Bonnie Russo. She owns this amazing company in Florida, Papillon Health and Wellness, and she presents with me everywhere we go. And when we are speaking at NASW Connecticut in a few months, Miss Laney's actually going to be presenting with us in person, and that is I'm fangirling so hard I can't even deal with myself. To have someone that has changed my life and so many others to be physically present is a little inspiring, to say the
That's
least.
awesome. No, I think that's amazing. When I did the recovery oriented cognitive therapy, I didn't get to see Aaron Beck, but my old supervisor did the year before, and right before, unfortunately, he passed away the next year. But I got to interact with his daughter Judith, as well as a few of the creators of CTR. It's always something amazing to be able to interact with kind of the minds behind
Oh my
things, right?
goodness. Yes. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
honestly. So you've mentioned it a few times, and as we kind of, you know, just kind of round up a little bit, you mentioned God a few times, faith and spirituality. Is that something that's important for you?
It absolutely is. I never push that on other people. I want them to have whatever grounds them. But for me, I can honestly say I'm big on this idea of the footprints poem. I can look back on so many times and I was just angry. Like, why in the heck am I walking alone here? Where are these people? And then I realized I was carried through these spaces. And that's something that sticks with me. My faith guides me. It fills me. It helps me be able to serve others. And I think it gives me healing and hopefully helps me instill some hope and healing in other people too.
Ashley, I appreciate just getting to know you and hearing your story, but also you being willing to speak openly and candidly on a podcast for everyone else to hear as well. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for tuning in on the path.